there's 14 numbers. It's actually not a lot. We're only looking at them once a month. There's 14 things. And when we stack them up month after month, and the first thing you would do is you would fill in your numbers for this month and you'd backdate the last 6 or 12 months. So you can look back and you go, let me look at the big picture, because we've got a couple of rules when we look at numbers. Number one, we never look at a metric in isolation. So we don't just look at it without any context and go, oh my God, 4 DNAs, or oh my God, we had a bad rebook rate this month. We never look in isolation. And number two, trend is our friend. So we are looking for trend over time, right? And when we can look over how the numbers have moved over 12 months, it's a lot less stressful. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Optimise Practice Podcast. I'm your host, Blake Sargent, and today it's just me again. And I'm going to share with you the numbers you need to know in your practice. I can understand many of you want to avoid numbers like the plague, but I can tell you what's more stressful than numbers is not knowing your numbers. So I'm going to show you exactly which numbers you need to know in your practice, how often, and why you need to know those numbers and what they mean. And the goal is by the end of this, you'll go, that's not that complicated. That's quite easy. And I can see how if I just knew those few basic things, I'd actually be able to have total oversight onto what's actually going on in my practice. And that's the goal of the numbers, by the way, is for you to be able to sit there with no emotion and by looking at the numbers go, I see what's happening. I often think of it like, that film, The Matrix, where Neo, he sees all these numbers tumbling down the screen. And to start with, they're just a jumble of numbers. They don't mean anything. But with a little bit of skill, he then, he learned to read the numbers and he could see the whole world. He could see the full picture. And that's really what it is. Learning numbers is just a skill, and it's so much easier than people think. They just tend to avoid them. So I'm going to run you through which ones we look at Optimise Health. Well, I'm going to run you through the ones that we teach everybody we work with to do. And I'll even give you a copy of our scoreboard, like a blank one. So if you want that, just send an email to hero@hivepractice.com and with the subject line scoreboard, and we'll just send you a blank version of this. So if you're listening to this and you want to go and fill it out for yourself, you can. How often do we look at our numbers? Well, most people send their numbers to their accountant at the end of the year, and then the accountant takes a few months to reconcile them, and then they send you a bit of paper which shows you how much money you made during those 12 months. And we get a bit of paper and we look down to the bottom and we go, I made £15,000 profit. Well, where the hell is it? Right? That bit of paper arrived 18 months after you started doing the activities. So it is way too late to do anything meaningful. And so we look at our numbers monthly, which means we can course correct once a month. We don't want any surprises. We just want to go, what was the truth of what happened this month? And let's just look at the same numbers every single month, month in, month in, month in, month out, month in, month out. Right? As part of that, we recommend everybody to have a bookkeeper. Having a year-end accountant isn't enough. If you're doing your bookkeeping yourself, I'll tell you this, I'm just going to be direct with you. You're doing it wrong. Even those of you who think you're doing it right and you go, I'm not going to pay somebody to do this because I can do it myself. You're not a qualified bookkeeper. And every time, because we have a little accounting business, Hive Accounting, run by Ben, who's just an absolute expert. And every single time he's ever come across, he's overtaken work that somebody had done themselves, they were doing it wrong. They might have been doing it 80% right, 85% right, but it's those little details that when you try and do it yourself and you're not an accountant and you don't understand tax and you don't understand a proper chart of accounts and you don't understand how to forecast and how to allow for depreciation. When you don't understand how to do that, don't try and do it yourself. And as a little aside to this, if the journey we're on is to build a practice that can ultimately work without our daily input, right? And that's not everybody's goal, but we don't want to be always a one-man band with like a harmonica strapped to our ear and like cymbals on our knees and, we're beating a drum back here and we've got a keyboard down here. That can't last forever, right? At some stage, we've got to go, what are some of the little tasks that we can actually get some help with. Hiring a bookkeeper to do this for you monthly is not only the smart and right decision from doing things properly, but it's an easy thing for you to take off your plate. All right. Easy thing for you to take off your plate. So we have bookkeeper every single month. The bookkeeper helps us with the financial bits, but then we have a bunch of other KPIs we look at as well. So I'm going to share with you what they are. So let me start with it. There's 14 numbers. It's actually not a lot. We're only looking at them once a month. There's 14 things. And when we stack them up month after month, and the first thing you would do is you would fill in your numbers for this month and you'd backdate the last 6 or 12 months. So you can look back and you go, let me look at the big picture, because we've got a couple of rules when we look at numbers. Number one, we never look at a metric in isolation. So we don't just look at it without any context and go, oh my God, 4 DNAs, or oh my God, we had a bad rebook rate this month. We never look in isolation. And number two, trend is our friend. So we are looking for trend over time, right? And when we can look over how the numbers have moved over 12 months, it's a lot less stressful. It's a little bit like looking at the stock market, right? If you check the stock market every 5 minutes and you've got money in the stock market, it goes up and down intermittently, right? And you can be highs to lows within a day. But when you look at it over the course of a year and you look at the trends, you go, it's trending up. It's okay. So we're looking at trends. All right, here we go. So 5, 5, 4, 5 financial, 5 practice metrics, and then 4 what I call, right, every month we need to know the revenue. How much money came in this month? Every month we need to know the profit, which is how much money came in. Then we spent a load of stuff. What was left? That's what the profit is. And number 3, cash flow, which is different to profit. Cash is the change in the bank balance from the start to the end of the month. Did it go up this month? Did it go down this month? Sometimes you can show a good profit, healthy profit, but your cash flow can go down. Why? Because sometimes we have a tax bill, or we have something we want to pay for that's out of the blue, or we're paying our rent in quarterly chunks. So our bank account actually takes a hit, but actually when we look at our accounts, an accountant would normally account that rent each month, for example, right? So it's really important we keep an eye on cash and not get too caught up with profit, because you can't buy me a beer with profit. You can only buy me a beer with cash. You can't pay your staff with profit. You can only pay your team with cash, right? So that's why we look at cash. So we've had revenue, profit, cash flow. Great news. Those 3 numbers will be spoon-fed to you by your bookkeeper every single month. That's what they're there for, right? They'll send you a little set of management accounts each month, which should have profit and loss, cash flow statement. What other one am I missing? And a balance sheet, right? And they don't change much each month, but we've just got to keep an eye on them each time. So we go to our scoreboard and we put in how much money came in, the revenue, turnover, whatever you want to call it, the profit, the cash flow from our bookkeeper. Great. Now, the next 2 little financials is what was the average spend, which is where we go, how much came in, how many appointments were there, divide the amount of money by the appointments, and that's on average, how much did people spend with us? What was our average spend? And then do we have any product sales? Product sales, it's part of turnover, but we just want to be a bit more granular than that. We want to say, okay, well, we've got our treatment income, but then what about product sales? This gets interesting when we start looking at this per practitioner, which I'll come on to, because we have a practice scoreboard, which just gives us the overview of what's going on in the practice. But surely you would agree that if you had your kids at school and you went to the parents' evening and you said to the teacher, okay, how are my kids getting on? And the teacher went, well, the whole class has a B-. You'd say, well, hang on, what do you mean? Don't you do individual grades? They go, no, we're just giving the class as a whole an overall grade. That's what a practice scoreboard does. It shows how we're doing as a team. But wouldn't you agree that when it comes to the welfare of your own kids, you're going to go, no, I need to know how my kid's doing in each subject, right? Maybe there are 14 subjects, right? Just to draw a parallel analogy, right? I need to know how they're doing in each one, because in one of them, they're going to be getting an A. One of them, they're probably getting a D. One of them a C, one of them a B. I need to know how they're doing in each subject. That's why we have a practitioner scoreboard as well, so that we can help mentor, help teach, help train each of the practitioners. They're all different. So one practitioner is brilliant at rebooking patients, but gets a lot of DNAs. One of them is really good with product sales, but has a low net promoter score, for example, right? So we need to know per person so we can help that practitioner to become the best practitioner they can possibly be. Right, let's backtrack. So financials, revenue, profit, cash flow from your bookkeeper, then average spend and product sales. Now let's look at some practice metrics. Each month, wouldn't it be important to know how many appointments we saw in the month? Would it also not be cool to know how many of those were new appointments? When we look at new appointments versus appointments, it can give us an indication as to our opportunity to grow. You know, if we've got 25% of people that come in are new patients, we go, wow, we've got real opportunity to grow this business because we're getting a lot of new business. If it's down at 5-10%, we go, okay, maybe we need to put some marketing efforts into getting new patients in. So we've got appointments and new appointments. Then one of my favorite metrics, don't really know why, it just gives me context whenever I'm looking at a practice, and it can totally shift what we're going to focus on with a practice owner, is utilization. Simply says, how busy are we? How busy are we is not a feeling. It's not a gut reaction. It's a number. And it says, let's look at our diary. How many appointments are there available in our diary? Let's take out lunches. Let's take out half-hour admin breaks, lunch and afternoon. Let's take out any team meetings, right? So let's take out the time that's actually non-billable. And then let's look at that space in the diary. Of those available appointments, how many were actually used? Too many of us get caught up in the worry about not being busy enough, even though sometimes we have a waiting list. And then we look to the future and there's a bit of white space in the diary and we panic and we think marketing is the answer to everything. It's not. Utilization it's a number. What percentage? It's a percentage of how busy are we? We use that metric to guide us for when to hire our next practitioner as well, because we know when we start getting to 75-80% full, and we used to run at like 100% full, and Troy will be the first person to say this. He'll be like, I ran at 100% full because I thought the busier the better. But two things happen. Number one, you burn out your team and they go, oh God, I hope the next patient doesn't show up so I can have a cup of tea, right? So you burn out your team. There's no longevity in that. And second, you can't get new patients in. So somebody's injured themselves or they're in pain and they go, hey, have you got an appointment within the next 24 hours? And you say, hey, sorry, we have a 2-week waiting list, which is no use to anyone. Now we, work at like 75% utilization. The ultimate goal, by the way, of a practice is to be able to bring in enough money to pay your team well, not just pay them, pay your team really, really well, to operate at 75% utilization, so that we don't want to be totally full to survive, and be left with a 20% net profit, 20 to 25% net profit. When we can do that, we know our model is working well. If your business requires you to be full all the time, and then you still not got much money, there's something wrong with your model. Yeah, there's something wrong with your model. You're probably charging far too little, or you're spending too much. Associates who are on 50-60%. So every £10 that comes into your practice, £5-6 of it's already going out. Okay, well, then you've got rent to pay, you've got admin to pay, you've got other costs to pay, and you've got to be left with net profit. So again, you can see how when we start seeing all of these numbers, it can really give us a full picture of actually what's happening in our business. So that was utilization. Net promoter score is how much do our patients love us. It's the most tried and tested customer satisfaction survey on the planet, and it says, from a scale of 0 to 10, how likely would you be to recommend us to a friend or family member? 0 to 6, they hate us. 7 to 8, they're indifferent. 9 and 10, they love us. If we get a 0 to 6, we pick up the phone, we call them. 7 to 8, we do nothing. 9 to 10, we ask them for a Google review. Numbers is the language of business, and we have to be able to understand and read these numbers to understand the truth of what's going on. But they're not the purpose of business, right? Numbers just show us the outcome. Like, take a sport. If you're playing a tennis match and you're playing the game really well and you're getting a certain percentage of serves in and you're getting a certain percentage of returns back, and you're making a certain percentage of unforced errors, the scoreboard is going to take care of itself. So we can look at the scoreboard and go, wow, this is amazing. Like in football or hockey or any sort of goal type sport, if at the end of the match, the score shows that you lost 2-0, then we've got to come back and go, okay, hang on, we weren't playing the game very well. It's the same with these. If the scoreboard says that we're not profitable and we're not growing and we're not doing great and the net promoter score is low so people don't like us and they're not coming back, then we've got to come back and go, okay, what is it that we're not doing? Because the numbers show us that we're not doing a great job. And it all comes back to that, doing a great job, providing certainty and clarity in the treatment room, outlining a clear treatment plan for the patient, giving them a great customer service experience, making them feel great, ultimately fixing them or doing the best we can to fix them. We do all of that, the numbers will take care of themselves. But sometimes we have to look at it the other way around and go, let's look at the numbers so that we can look backwards and go, okay, well, where do we need to improve? So net promoter score is important. I like to look at revenue from the principal. What's the percentage? So if you're treating, how much of the turnover comes from you? Because you might have a team of 4 of you, but it might be that 60% of the income still comes from you. I like this metric just because when we're on a journey with a practice where their goal is to transform their job into a business, where they want to go from me to we, where they want to build it into something that is stable and that can ultimately work without them, and it's not them being the main person treating, so they can actually take a holiday and they could actually one day even sell the business or step away and have some freedom from it, then we need to know, well, how reliant is it? And we don't want to go with gut, we want to go with a number. So if you're the principal treating, how much of the turnover actually comes from you? And what are we looking for over time? Remember, trend is our friend. If you start your journey, you go, hey, my goal is I've got to reduce my treating days. I'm burnt out. I would need this to become more of a business. If you started at 80% of the income was from you, we just want to see a trend over time, not a sudden shift. But we want to see that trend is heading in the right direction over time. We're going 50% to you. And that is the metric that shows me where we are at on the journey from moving away from being a job into a business. So that's revenue by principle. The final 4, I call the leaky holes, because when we're looking at growing a practice, the first place we always look is retention. If your business is like a bucket, you've got patients coming in. If you've got loads of leaky holes, doesn't matter how many new patients you're bringing in. You could be an expert marketer, but if you're losing them faster than you're gaining them, then you can't grow. And whilst growth isn't the most important thing, doing a great job is the most important thing. And if we're doing a great job, well, then we're holding on to patients. I'll give you the 4 holes, and then I'll give you my 60-second training or 30-second training on this. So these are the holes. New patient rebook rate. It's a number. Of all the new patients that came in, how many booked a second appointment? Rebook rate. For all the patients that came in, how many of them left with another appointment in the diary? DNAs. How many people just didn't show up for their appointment? And number 4, cancel, no rebook. So how many people who had an appointment cancelled over the phone and then didn't rebook? Those are the 4 leaky holes in the practice. And actually, before we start looking at anything else in a practice, we look at those first, because they give us a very good indication of how well we're doing in the treatment room. So here's my 30-second training around it for practitioners. And I've tried this with loads of practitioners. I've done this in a room full of practice owners and practitioners. And I ask this question. I say, so tell me, how many patients can you fix in one visit on average? And most of the time, practitioner will say to me, none. Like, I need to see them more than once, normally, unless they come in, they got a splinter or something like that, but none. Okay. So ideally, you saying that your new patient rebook rate, you want it to be 100%. They go, yeah, that's what I'd like. Yeah. I say, okay, cool. And on average, how many times do you think you need to see a patient to fix them, to really complete treatment and for everything to be hunky-dory? And they say, 3, 4, 5 times on average, sometimes more, sometimes less, but 3, 4, 5 times. Okay. So 4 or 5 times. That would mean a natural rebook rate of 75 to 80%. Is that fair? And they go, yeah, that's about right. I go, okay, cool. So by their own admission, if they're doing a great job, because again, this is not about getting the owner rich. That's not what this is about. This is about doing a great job in the treatment room. And a practitioner will tell you, if you ask them those questions, that for them to do a great treatment, for them to complete their job and do a great job, that new patient, ideally 100% rebook rate and 75 to 80% rebook rate. Sorry, new patient rebook rate. I just like to think of both of those rebook rates being 80%-ish, right? We don't need perfection. It's not about 100%, but let's say 80% rebook rate. DNAs, again, why didn't they show up? System error from our point. Did we not outline the treatment clearly enough? Did we not share with them what would happen if they didn't actually show up for their treatment, that they would still be hobbling about? Why haven't they shown up? And cancellation, no rebook, same thing. Why did they think it just wasn't that important that they could just cancel and not show up? Like, I get it that life takes in the way, but then we need a really good trained receptionist to say, hey, look, I understand life gets in the way, but look, we're busy, so let's get you booked back in, because your practitioners obviously said they need to see you again, so let's make sure we complete that treatment for you. So again, there's a lot of ways to train all of these numbers. Again, it's not training the numbers, it's training the process that then gives us a really good outcome. This is the overview we've got to understand. So those 4 leaky holes were DNAs, cancellation no rebook rate, and new patient rebook rate. Wouldn't your life be easier if you knew these numbers every month? It's just 14 numbers. It's not a lot. And 3 of them are going to come from your bookkeeper. And the rest of them we can pretty much get from our practice management software anyway. They're actually not hard to get. So let's run through them. Financials, revenue, profit, cash flow, and then average spend and product sales. Then practice metrics. How many appointments did we see that month? How many of them were new appointments? What was our utilization? How busy were we? What was our net promoter score? How much did they love us? And what was the revenue from the principal? How much of it is a job versus a business? What percentage of the income came from you? And then our 4 hot leaky holes: DNAs, cancellations, rebook rate, new patient rebook rate. You need those every single month. We'll give you our scoreboard if you want it. Just send an email to hero@hivepractice.com with the subject scoreboard, and we'll send you a link to our blank scoreboard for you to start filling out. Start filling it out by backdating it 6 months. Or 12 months if you like, and you'll go, I can actually see what's going on now. And then you'll have some gaps, and that's okay, because you can fill those in later. As we move forward, we add accuracy. And if there are columns that you just can't answer yet, that's okay. Just put zeros in, and you can go, okay, now I know I've got some missing gaps. But these aren't nice to haves, these numbers. You must know these figures. Like, you have to, because your life will be so much easier just to know these figures. And then, like I say, we look at these same numbers for each practitioner so that we can help them understand how good a job they're doing. And if there are areas they're not doing great in, well, you can't change something you're not aware of. The first step to change is awareness. And so we use these never as the stick, only ever as the carrot. And we engage them in a one-to-one every single month, every practitioner, one-to-one every single month. And they have this data. They have these numbers for them. Right? There's a couple of differences to a practitioner one. We don't give them the profit because you can't work that out per practitioner. So there are a few differences in the scoreboard. I won't go into them all now, but you can understand why we look at practice scoreboard. How's the whole class doing? And practitioner scoreboard. Cool. How's each team member doing? And let's help them get better. So let's leave it there for today. There's a quick overview of the numbers you need to understand in your practice. It's easier than you think. And the only thing more stressful than numbers is not knowing your numbers. So get these 14 KPIs done each month, and you'll be able to see exactly what's going on in your practice. So that's all for today's episode of the Optimise Practice Podcast. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you want help building a profitable, stable, and highly respected practice, then please reach out to us at The Hive so we can show you exactly how we did it and give you everything that you need and all the support you need. So I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.